Hello everybody, welcome back to another video on the ChaddyTheChump channel, and today we are going to be talking about the two boxing events that took place last night, both in the UK, one on the BBC, the other on DAZN. And yeah, it was a pretty chaotic night to say the least, two events clashing. The main events didn't actually clash, which was pretty good, although one of the main events lasted, you know, like a minute or something, so that didn't even really matter. But we are going to be talking about it, so let's get right into it. So the first one we are going to talk about is Jamie TKV defeating Fraser Clarke on the BBC. Now, I didn't see this one coming. I didn't predict a Jamie TKV win. I thought Fraser Clarke's boxing skills would be able to get him the win, possibly even by knockout. And at the start of the fight, it seemed to be going that way. It seemed, you know, Jamie TKV was trying to clinch early in the fight, but Clarke was doing well at stopping him from doing that, landing some good combinations. I thought, yeah, this is a Clarke win. But then, as the fight went on, TKV did a lot better at, you know, sort of the clinching, but the uppercuts as well. And, you know, when it came to the end of the fight, he really had Fraser Clarke hurt. And, you know, one of the rounds, I think it was round 11, I thought, how is Fraser Clarke even still in this fight, to be honest? He was absolutely gone. He is one tough man to stay up from that, because he was seriously, and I'll tell you, seriously hurt in that 11th round. But he managed to go all the way, and in the end, it was a split decision victory for Jamie TKV, which was a bit surprising. I did have TKV winning, but then again, he also did get a point deducted for low blows, which I thought was a little bit tight from the referee to do that. But he did decide that, and it didn't play into the scorecards in terms of TKV still getting the win. But yes, Jamie TKV is the new British champion. So where does he go from here? Well, I think it's a pretty obvious fight to make, and that is TKV versus Dave Allen in Sheffield Arena. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? Dave Allen can sell that out. It's for the British title. TKV, a known commodity now, especially from, you know, being on the BBC. It seems like this is the way to go. Dave Allen's having a fight in February on the Warrington versus Wood undercard, and that is a quick 8-rounder, which he should get past. And then after that, it could even be, you know, maybe the retirement fight, depending on if he wins or loses, against TKV in that Sheffield Arena. And I think that's a pretty good fight. You know, it's a good fight for both men. There's also the possibility of Richard Riakporhe getting the title shot before Dave Allen, because, you know, Richard Riakporhe is with Boxer, and Boxer might want to put the belt on Riakporhe, because it doesn't seem like, even though Jamie TKV is a Boxer fighter, you know, they don't really want him to get these wins for some reason. I'm not sure why. Maybe they're going to be more on his side. But there is a possibility that Richard Riakporhe does end up gunning for that British title, and we possibly see that as well. But there's a lot of opportunities now for Jamie TKV. Obviously, the heavyweight British title is a pretty good title to have, so he'll get a lot of more opportunities now. In terms of Fraser Clarke, you know, I'm not sure where you go from here. Obviously, the loss to Fabio Wardley by knockout, and now this, it's a bit tough, you know. You could try and, you know, sort of rebuild, but it is going to be pretty hard to do that. So, you know, maybe Boxer and Ben Shalom, they can possibly do it, but it is going to be tough, especially being 34 years of age, which, you know, you're getting to, you know, the end of your career now, and you're not quite British champion or at that level. It's going to be tough to come back, but he could do it. I guess we'll find out. But overall, in terms of Boxer on the BBC, I personally thought this show was pretty successful. Some very decent fights also on the undercard, which made this pretty good. And I think that this is the start of a pretty decent, good deal between Boxer and the BBC. I'm especially looking forward to the show in 3 weeks, Callum Simpson versus Troy Williamson. That is going to be a very good one, and hopefully that is probably as good as this show, because this was decent. You know, Boxer know how to put on good cards even without the names. You know, they have pretty entertaining fighters. Of course, you know, there's guys like Reese Edwards on the undercard of that one in Leeds in 3 weeks, so that should be pretty good as well. Okay, now then, let's move on and talk about Ben Whittaker's fight last night, if you could even call it that, because it ended super fast. I remember flicking to that fight, and 1 minute later, he knocked out his opponent, Benjamin Gavazzi, in, you know, pretty good style. It was a good knockout, but again, I said the opponent isn't the greatest, right? I remember Eddie Hearn said that he'd be facing a top 15 fighter in the world. Well, that was definitely a lie, because, you know, Gavazzi isn't a top 15 fighter in the world. I don't even know if he's top 15 in Germany. So, yeah, it was definitely a tune-up fight, but it has brought eyes to him, even more eyes, I guess. But I want to talk about what's next for Ben Whittaker, because, of course, that was an easy performance. But in terms of what's next, you know, it seems like he's going to go to the US, but I don't think that's a good idea. I'd like to see him stay, you know, sort of in British boxing, maybe go for a British or European title. Obviously, Lyndon Arthur is holding the European title. What a fight that would be. And, you know, that would be pretty big, and I'd love to see that one for the European title. But, you know, I don't know, I don't think they want to risk him. I think Lyndon Arthur's a very risky fight if they were to take it, to be honest. And, you know, he ain't no Gavazzi, alright? People, you know, don't take this too far, right? Gavazzi isn't a world beater, right? He didn't just knock out a world beater, you know. He knocked out kind of a journeyman who was set up to be pretty much knocked out, and, you know, I thought more would come of it, but more didn't. So Ben Whittaker, you know, I think he is probably at that British to European level right now. Obviously he can get better, but I think the Lyndon Arthur fight, I think he'd lose that fight. I think, you know, he'd probably lose to guys like Buatsi, Hutchinson, Ezra Taylor. I still don't think he's at that level quite yet. But overall, 2 pretty decent shows this weekend, right? Obviously, I managed to flip between each one, you know, either the undercards, you know, like Wong v Gwyn was on, and then when the co-main event of Ben Whittaker's card was on, Clarke TKV was on. So they did very well at making sure they don't clash. I think, you know, whether it was intended or not, it worked out very well, and I hope it continues to work out this way for the show clashes, because then most people, you know, like boxing fans, will actually watch both shows like I did. But overall, a great double header weekend. Comment down below your thoughts on these 2 fights. Who should TKV fight next? Who should Ben Whittaker fight next? And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.